On the 10s, weekdays on News 10 Good Morning.
On World News tonight, the war in Iraq. How close did the U.S. get to catching or killing the most wanted man in the country? An ABC News investigation. The continuing tragedy in Haiti, thousands of people with nothing to eat or drink and angry. Jean, the storm which did the damage, is now a hurricane headed for Florida. In presidential politics, a battleground report from the Badger State. Wisconsin debates the war and jobs. Medicine on the cutting edge, the remarkable procedure that helps a woman regain her fertility after cancer. And in the midst of chaos this Friday, our Person of the Week.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to begin tonight with the war in Iraq over there and over here. Over here, the war is front and center in the presidential race, and we'll get to that in a moment. Over there, another rash of kidnappings. 10 employees from one phone company have been kidnapped, 6 Egyptians and 4 Iraqis. The British government today distributed 50,000 leaflets asking the kidnappers who've already killed 2 Americans to spare the life of an Englishman they are still holding. And we're going to report tonight on the man who is getting blamed for many of these kidnappings, which takes us first to the results of an ABC News investigation and ABC's Brian Ross. Brian.
Peter, American and Jordanian officials tell ABC News that twice in the last year, U.S. forces have come within minutes of capturing Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. But each time he's been able to get away, and some U.S. officials suspect he's being tipped off. Many of the recent U.S. airstrikes have also targeted Zarqawi, but without success. A strike last week killed one of his top deputies, but if Zarqawi was with him, he got away. The 37-year-old Zarqawi has remained elusive as ever, despite a $25 million reward.
He almost certainly has intelligence sources inside the Iraqi government and inside the U.S., probably Iraqi advisors or translators.
Officials say Zarqawi has established a kind of military command structure based in Fallujah and has been able to attract more than 1,000 full-time fighters. According to one report, Zarqawi now has commanders and squadrons across Iraq. Most are thought to be in Fallujah and Mosul, with smaller squadrons in Baghdad and other cities.
He seems to have a logistic group. He seems to have a financing group. We don't know the exact structure, but from his activities, there is a high level of discipline. And while there doesn't seem to be central control, there seems to be a high degree of coordination as well.
Many of Zarqawi's inner circle come from his hometown in Jordan, the city of Zarqa, from which he takes the name Zarqawi. Residents say he was a teenage street thug and drug user who once ran this video store. Zarqawi's wife and 4 children still live here, including a 7-year-old son, Musab. No one here has acknowledged seeing Zarqawi since he was released from prison in a general amnesty 5 years ago. In that time, he has become one of the most feared men in the world, a master of disguises, switching from bearded to clean-shaven, from Arab to Western dress. A senior U.S. official told ABC News tonight that catching Zarqawi, and soon, is of the highest priority, with every available technique and technology, Peter, being deployed even as we speak.
Many thanks, Brian. Brian Ross on Zarqawi. The Iraqi Prime Minister was at the United Nations today. Ayad Alawi told the General Assembly that as far as he was concerned, Iraq was committed to holding elections in January. But there is still some confusion and maybe debate. The Deputy Secretary of State, Richard Armitage, said today that any vote would have to be held throughout the country. And the Defense Secretary, Donald Rumsfeld, says that even if insurgents disrupt voting in some areas, a partial vote would be better than none at all. This is a pretty big debate in Washington. Our national security correspondent, Martha Raddatz, is with us tonight. Martha, is there any universal feeling in Washington that this election will be held without question?
I think that is a universally held belief here in Washington, that this election will go ahead. Donald Rumsfeld's take on this was probably more realistic. However, if they can't secure these areas like Fallujah and Ramadi, the elections will probably go ahead anyway, and then there will be debate about that, whether they were valid.
And what about the addition of American troops either to participate in the elections or beforehand?
General John Abizaid, who's the overall commander of the area, has said he needs more troops but doesn't think he'll need more American troops. There happens to be a rotation going on there where the Americans will have about 15,000 more troops in the area as some troops go in, some troops go out. General Abizaid is hoping also for more fully trained Iraqi troops.
Many thanks. Martha Raddatz at the Pentagon. A little later in the broadcast, we'll have a report on the war and the presidential campaign in Pennsylvania, or rather in Wisconsin. But in Pennsylvania today, Philadelphia specifically, Senator Kerry made a very pointed attack on the president's handling of the war against terrorism. Increasingly, we see in this campaign that terrorism, and who is better able to deal with it, is a very big issue. Mr. Kerry or the president go at each other again. Here is today's report from ABC's Dean Reynolds.
On the subject of waging the war on terror, Senator Kerry was blunt.
George Bush made Saddam Hussein the priority. I would have made Osama bin Laden the priority.
Bush, he said, mistakenly gave the job of capturing the al-Qaeda leader to Afghan warlords who let him slip away.
Instead of finishing the job in Afghanistan, the president rushed into a new war in Iraq. That was the wrong choice.
In his speech at Temple University in Philadelphia, Kerry said the administration was gripped by confusion, where the president says one day the war on terror cannot be won, then the next day says it can. Kerry said he had a 7-step program to deal with terrorist threats, though it was not strikingly different from what the president says he's already doing.
Free and sovereign Iraq.
Yesterday, Kerry said he could do a better job to win peace in Iraq, and suggested the president's meeting with interim Iraqi Prime Minister Alawi was an attempt to whitewash the mess in that country. Today, the president said Kerry had done worse than that.
Senator Kerry held a press conference and questioned Prime Minister Alawi's credibility. You can't lead this country if your ally in Iraq feels like you question his credibility.
But for Kerry, appearing tough on national security is vital to his chances, and he's supposed to appeal especially to women voters concerned about protecting their families. That's why he wove assurances through his words.
No American mother should have to lie awake at night wondering whether her children will be safe at school the next day.
And Peter, it's no secret why the senator is going after the votes of married women. Their votes are very important to his election, and right now the polls show that he is not doing nearly as well among them as he has to.
The director of the CIA was sworn in today. Porter Goss is a former intelligence officer who'd been a Republican congressman since 1989. Mr. Goss says he wants to improve the CIA's ability to recruit spies and get information from them, which he said is essential in fighting terrorism. Other news today, the governor of Florida. This time it is Hurricane Jeanne, and there is now a hurricane warning across most of Florida's Atlantic coast. Jeanne would be the 4th hurricane to hit Florida this season, something that has not happened since record-keeping began in 1851. There is an increasingly desperate situation in the Caribbean nation of Haiti. As a result of Jeanne, it's about a week since Jeanne, which was then a tropical storm, brought such devastation, particularly to the northern part of the country. Aid agencies are struggling to get food and water to Gonaive, the city that got the worst of it. Lisa Laflamme of the Canadian television network CTV filed this report late today for us.
Hungry and thirsty, these flood survivors fought for their place in line. Desperate, they tried to break down barriers to get to the food. UN forces fired smoke grenades and warning shots to chase the crowds back. We have nothing to eat, this woman says. We need help. But it's not for lack of supply. More trucks arrived today. It's a lack of security preventing aid workers from doling out more. Frustrated, this French aid worker says the distribution of aid is a disaster. It's not organized at all. Today, the UN did add another 150 peacekeepers to the 500 already here. If more aid doesn't hit the streets soon, there's fear the tension in this city of 250,000 now homeless could spiral into more violence. It's almost a week since the flood, and bodies, some still not bagged and buried, wait for removal to these mass graves. This is the poorest area in Gonaive. About 300 people were killed in this neighborhood alone by the floods. They've been forced now to incinerate the bodies themselves because no aid has found its way to this slum. Bodies burn in the middle of the road while the carcasses of cattle lay there in the stifling stench. Tempers boil over.
You know, they don't bring nothing here, you know.
The UN is promising aid will get through once distribution sites are secure.
The effects of what we are doing now are not visible on the ground, but they will start to be efficient in the next 2 or 3 days.
But 2 or 3 more days for the people here may be too much to ask. Lisa Laflamme of CTV for ABC News in Gonaive, Haiti.
Haiti, so often the victim. When we come back this evening, the Battleground stage tonight, Wisconsin, simple, hearty pleasures, as well as presidential candidates. In other news tonight, a cancer patient regains her fertility after chemotherapy. That's medicine on the cutting edge. And at the end of the broadcast tonight, our person of the week, her house was like a zoo this week.
Ready to make the move to Levitra for a strong, lasting experience? Ask your doctor if Levitra's right for you. Levitra is what many men with ED count on to improve their erectile quality. Strong and lasting when he wants it. It's what Levitra's all about.
Levitra is only for men healthy enough for sexual activity. Do not take Levitra if you take nitrates for chest pains or alpha blockers for prostate problems or high blood pressure, as this may cause an unsafe drop in blood pressure. Side effects may include headache, flushing, and stuffy or runny nose. In the rare case an erection lasts for more than 4 hours, seek immediate medical attention.
Strong, lasting. Experience Levitra for yourself. If you're on another ED treatment, maybe it's time to try Levitra. Ask your doctor about a free sample.
Much gets passed from one generation to the next. Character, ambition, wisdom, if they're listening on the other end. Maybe the best gift is one that only you can give, a sense of who they are. When that time comes, Lincoln is there. To share more of life's reward, call your financial advisor or 1-877-ASK-LINCOLN.
Ooh, look. Dear Prilosec OTC guys, 1 pill a day, 24 hours, 0 heartburn? How's that work? Signed, the frequent heartburn guy next to you.
Whoa, here's how. It's the only OTC that directly shuts down lots of those acid-producing pumps in your stomach. That's why it's the only OTC that can work for 24 hours with 1 pill a day. Awesome! Prilosec OTC! 1 pill a day, 24 hours, 0 heartburn!
I am not a plumber.
I am not a carpenter.
I am not an electrician.
We know you're not. Next time, come see us first. Ace, the helpful place.
We're going to take a closer look tonight at another state still up for grabs in the presidential campaign. Tonight, Wisconsin. There are about a dozen of these battleground states. And although in Wisconsin, President Bush has opened up a lead, 53-43 over Senator Kerry, according to the latest ABC News poll, it's still 6 weeks until the election. The president went to Wisconsin again today. It was his 6th trip since March. Senator Kerry has visited 8 times. Here's ABC's Dan Harris.
Wisconsin is a state of simple, hearty pleasures. Here they enjoy beer and bratwurst.
Anything else I can get for you?
Produce cheese and Harleys, and obsess over Green Bay Packer football.
Heading into November, what's the most important issue for you?
The Packers.
But this state is also hosting one of the most caustic, competitive races in the nation, with barnstorming candidates and blanketed airwaves.
George Bush's wrong choices have weakened us here at home.
But it was Senator Kerry who voted 5 times to raise Medicare premiums.
Tailgaters outside this Milwaukee Brewers game need no reminder that they live in a battleground.
Are we aware? Do you not watch television?
We know that quite well.
Yeah.
In 2000, George Bush lost here by fewer than 6,000 votes, just 0.2%. This year, both sides agree if there is one Democratic state that is most likely to be picked off by the president, this is it.
The president does have liabilities. a loss of nearly 80,000 manufacturing jobs.
What do you care about most?
Getting a job.
And a war in Iraq whose casualties hit close to home.
I'd like to see this war that we got involved in end somehow, some way.
John Kerry's liabilities include mistakenly calling Lambeau Field, hallowed home of the Packers, Lambert Field.
And in deference to Lambert Field and Vince, whom I've quoted a few times, I got to go to this Packer fan here.
The president pounced on Kerry's fumble.
If someone offers you a cheesehead, don't say you want some wine. Just put it on your head and take a seat at Lambeau Field.
Democrats say to win in Wisconsin, they must boost turnout in the inner cities, a real challenge.
Do you think people feel like their vote doesn't make a difference?
It doesn't make a difference. If you go and talk to folks and I say, let's go vote, my vote don't count. They ain't gonna count my vote anyway.
While Democrats tout their unprecedented ground operation here in America's Dairyland, with 6 weeks to go and polls not going their way, they are, in the words of one operative, on high alert. Dan Harris, ABC News, Milwaukee.
The Battleground states. When we come back this evening, the birth that is being called a breakthrough for women with cancer. In Belgium this week, a 32-year-old woman is the first ever to give birth after receiving an ovarian tissue transplant. Why is this? Medicine on the cutting edge? Here's ABC's John McKenzie.
Her name is Tamara. Researchers say her birth represents a major medical breakthrough. Her mother says simply,
I'm very, very happy. Yeah, very happy.
7 years ago, when Eduardo Turiad was 25 years old, she was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. She knew that toxic chemotherapy would likely destroy her ovaries, leaving her infertile. So before she began treatment, doctors removed tiny pieces of her ovary, each containing hundreds of immature eggs, and froze them. Turiad completed the chemotherapy sessions, then radiation. After she was cancer-free for 5 years, doctors took those tiny pieces of ovarian tissue and put them back in her body. Her eggs began to develop, and she became pregnant.
I'm crying at first, and it's a dream. It was a dream.
I think this technique will help thousands of other patients in this country and around the world who are facing sterilizing treatment from cancer.
Researchers emphasize the procedure is still experimental and unreliable, but already more than 100 cancer patients in the U.S. have stored pieces of their ovaries for use when they are cancer-free. If this technique of removing and restoring ovarian tissue is perfected, it might eventually allow healthy women to bank their ovaries, extending fertility by 5 or 10 years.
I can see that happening down the road. Women will want to put off childbearing, but save the eggs they had when they were age 25 at their peak fertility.
For now, doctors will be following Tamara's development closely to ensure this new procedure is as safe as it appears. John McKenzie, ABC News, New York.
When we come back, I guess we should say another person of the week.
World News Tonight with Peter Jennings and Person of the Week. Brought to you by Walmart.
I can't think of a smarter investment than education.
Walmart annually gives over $40 million to education and $150 million to communities nationwide.
Walmart's Teacher of the Year program recognized 3,500 teachers in local communities across the United States this year.
I am proud to work for a company that supports education.
Last year, Walmart gave 7,000 scholarships to college-bound students. Walmart and Sam's Club Foundation helps our students reach for the stars.
Got gas, pressure, bloating? Tums doesn't treat gas, neither does Pepto-Bismol. To treat gas, use Gas-X for fast, powerful relief.
Popcorn? Ooh.
Gas-X beats the bloat, and acids don't.
In the mood for something different? How about Levitra? Ask your doctor if Levitra's right for you. It's the best way to experience that difference.
Ask about a free sample. Ask about Levitra. Levitra, when it counts.
For years, the kids have called me their guardian angel.
Brady?
When I got cancer and the chemo made me anemic and too weak to keep working, I had to do something. I asked my doctor about Procrit.
Procrit is for chemotherapy-related anemia in patients with most kinds of cancer. Procrit is proven to help rebuild red blood cells, which can mean more strength. Ask your doctor if Procrit is right for you. Procrit is not for patients with uncontrolled high blood pressure and may increase the risk of blood clots.
I'm back, and there's no stopping me.
No. This one, here, yeah.
Thanks.
Honey Nut Cheerios. When you want something that tastes great and can help lower cholesterol, the choice is obvious.
Yeah, that's the one. Thanks.
Honey Nut Cheerios. Be happy, be healthy.
You know about Allegra, but you're about to see something you may never have seen before. Allegra D. Ask your doctor about Allegra D. You need to know about it.
We're out of water. That means I can't mix my fiber drink or take fiber pills.
No problem. Try new Benefiber Chewables. Tasty orange cream. No water needed.
We're saved!
New Benefiber Chewables makes taking fiber easier.
The phenomenon is back with a 2-hour season premiere featuring a widowed father, his 8 children, and the home of their dreams. Extreme Makeover Home Edition premieres Sunday at 8/7 Central, only on ABC.
Finally this evening, our Person of the Week. As you heard at the beginning of the program, there's another hurricane headed for Florida, with 3 already in the last few weeks. There have been so many human stories to report along the Gulf Coast, and it's hard to say that one stands out above others in the telling. But the woman we choose this week certainly had a compelling experience, and there was no question that she made a difference.
The one wonderful thing is, if one can say that about a hurricane, unlike a tornado or unlike an earthquake, you do have some time to start preparing, in the event that it does hit your area. Where are you?
Patty Hall is the director of the Alabama Gulf Coast Zoo, and with millions of other people last week, she and her staff and her animals were right in the way as Hurricane Ivan approached. And when Patty evacuated, she took everyone, staff and animals, to her house.
It's actually considered a Cat 5 house, which is supposed to endure Category 5 hurricanes. All 18 of us were in there with all of our pets. We had 9 domestic dogs. We had 5 personal cats, 2 monkeys, 2 Bengal, 4-month-old Bengal tigers, and I always say, in a partridge in a pear tree,
Ultimately, 267 animals found refuge at Patty's place. She and her husband have 10 acres. Some of the animals stayed in trailers. The staff and their families stayed in the house. There was no power or running water for days. They siphoned gas from cars and trucks to get emergency generators running.
So everybody's got to have breakfast. Yeah. The 4-month-old Bengal tigers, they get the courtyard in the pool, and then when they leave, then we have a 6-month-old bear. He gets to go swimming. We are walking wolves around the property. So it's not a zoo around here, it's a 3-ring circus.
And how was it having Bengal tigers at home?
It's just sort of natural for us. Most of us feel very privileged that we're able to be this up close and personal with these exotic animals.
Patty has always loved animals. She grew up in Connecticut. She went to the University of Louisville in Kentucky to major in art. The Louisville Zoo asked the young art student to paint some animal murals. Pretty soon, Patty was hooked. Her mother worried.
She was not really happy, the fact that why did I want to do this and expose myself to dangerous animals? And I tell you, well, Mom, if you would have allowed me to have dogs and cats when I was a kid, maybe I wouldn't have to do this now that I'm an adult. The donkeys and the llamas can go in here. That's enough! Down, down, down! We're like MacGyvers here, we just sort of have to think on our feet, and sometimes we jimmy rig and do things by baling wire and duct tape, but we get the job done.
The zoo has suffered enormous damage. Much of the habitat has been ruined. Things are still bad for hundreds of thousands of people. Many people lost their possessions. In Alabama and Florida, nearly 200,000 homes are still without electricity. Businesses dependent on tourists don't know if they will recover in time for the Christmas holidays. And that includes the zoo. On Wednesday, after 8 days at Patty's place, 8 of the large animals are back. So far, this is the only part of the zoo that is still safe enough for them. The open areas are still unusable. Patty was very happy to see Chucky, the alligator, safe and sound. He'd gone missing during the hurricane. He was the zoo's first inhabitant 15 years ago. Patty says this is a sign that all will be well eventually.
You know, at night when I close my eyes, I think of the eyes of all the animals at the zoo, the big brown eyes, different eyes looking at me, knowing that they depend on the staff and me for their livelihood. And that's what motivates me, the responsibility of 265 lives.
And so we choose Patty Hall. She did her job well, shelter from the storm. Just before we leave this evening, a program note. Later this evening on 2020, Barbara Walters will make her last appearance as anchor. Not that she's going very far. That's our report on World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night.
Mary Kay Letourneau. She had a shocking affair with her 12-year-old student.
Did you try to resist?
Had his child twice and went to prison for over 7 years. Now, for the first time, she finally tells her whole unbelievable story only to Barbara Walters on 2020.